Guys, this video is called Conviction, an Anthem trailer from Neil Blomkamp. Blomkamp, I think that's Blomkamp. So this is from Neil Oat Studios and bioware. Comes a live action trailer survival set in the world of Anthem decades before the events of the game. When did this video come out, guys? It says 6 years ago. So February 14th, 2019. Why have I not seen this? He was the same director for District 9. Again, the real reason why we're watching this amongst playing Anthem this week, and we're going to actually play probably the entire campaign, is because Anthem is getting pulled offline next Monday.
Long, long ago, we were the slaves of the Urgoth. And eventually, after much strife, we broke free. And so we made our walls high. And our convictions strong. No one can survive out there on their own.
We found her last night, in the jungle.
They said she must have been out there for years.
It's not possible. I always knew this day would come. A new beginning.
And we'll get your son back. You have my word.
And yet, new enemies would be forged. A line would be crossed. Things would never return to the way before. See visions, Kelly. Your history. Your future. A life unlived.
You backstabbing rat! You sold us out! I never should have trusted you! In the middle of it. That's not possible.
The anthem swims through your mind. It knows you. It knows us all.
All right, look, I'm not saying, I mean, it's a good trailer. This would have dropped a week before the launch of Anthem. I have never seen this video. Okay, so did anything come from this? It's an Anthem trailer. Was there like supposed to be a show or something? Was like a secret level episode? Depression? Nope. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, I mean, I don't know what they were making, what they were planning on making with this. Anybody got any information on that? They were trying to compete with the early Destiny 1 live action trailers. Yeah, but the D1 live action trailers were just like memey and over the top. You know what I'm saying? Like they weren't really This is like series. Like this seems like a series, you know what I mean? But also not that good. Very vague. Very vague. You know what I mean? It's kind of like throwing a lot of stuff on the screen here, trying to just spark a little bit of emotion from you. You know what I mean? Yeah, this feels like a movie. Who knows? Could have possibly been good. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of Concord. You know, Concord had a lot of heavy investments, a lot of funding. They had the secret level episode. Now, here's the difference. Anthem's actually a good fucking game, like straight up. It's actually a good game. BioWare or EA, whoever, just didn't want to, you know, continue deving that thing. No. Anthem's actually a good game. What I mean by this is that it's almost like, I truly think EA and BioWare thought this thing was going to kill, man. And who knows, had it done so? Had Anthem have popped off? Had it became that looter shooter we all wanted it to become, we might have gotten whatever this series would have been. You know what I mean? At the same time, as crazy as this is going to sound, BioWare probably would have done better if they had actually brought in someone to walk them through how to run a live service game properly. And why do I bring that up? Because decisions like banning Glad for finding an XP, a super efficient XP farm inside of Anthem, that's like a no-brainer. That's because you cannot ban people for that kind of stuff just simply because they're being efficient or they're cheesing something. You know what I mean? If they're cheating, that's another thing. But if it's like, hey, you can double loot a chest to get extra drops by reloading the instance. Okay, that's on you as a developer. You should address that. Not, well, we're just gonna ban everyone who is doing that, who is reloading that instance. You see what I mean? I think BioWare actually would have done better had they had someone that just came in and walked them through bits, even though it seems like common sense. Would have done better if they had someone walk them through like the things that you should and shouldn't do when running this. And then on the other side of things is like they didn't give themselves any runway of content post-launch. We beat the game and it was like, all right, now what? And it's all about how much you feed back into it. And there's just nothing there. There's too many like core issues too. So it's almost like BioWare was just too caught up just trying to clean up the core problems that they couldn't even build future content. There is a world out there, guys, where Anthem did succeed. And not only did it succeed, but it might have been, I honestly think it could have went like an ARPG route. It could have brought with every expansion a new javelin, because that's the thing, man. This is the kind of, it's not like Destiny. Destiny's kind of locked to its system where it's a warlock, a titan, and a hunter. Not saying it can't bring another class. We hope it does one day. Anthem really could have been that game that could have brought in a new javelin with every expansion. That really would have mixed things up, you know? And I'm saying all this right now because like we've been replaying this today, man. And I mean, I've actually been really impressed, genuinely impressed with, I don't know if this is post changes that maybe BioWare did do, but I forgot just how much fun this game was to play, how good the game looks. And so we'll continue playing it out for the rest of the week. One of my favorite games, I wish it did succeed. I wanted to play this game, but the negative press deterred me. I mean, dude, we all, like all the Destiny players played it. And I don't think anyone was going out of the way to hate on this game. I think everybody was extremely optimistic about it. It's like, let me lay it out here for Destiny players. Imagine, remember after you beat the campaign in Destiny 1 and you got to the end of it and you were like, that's it? I mean, that's my experience. I don't know your experience, but my experience was, okay, was that really everything? Was that the game? Anthem was essentially that same exact experience, except Anthem didn't have Vault of Glass that came out right after its initial release. You see where I'm coming with this? Had Anthem had a Vault of Glass in the chamber to roll out post-launch that really made a big splash, that would have been the, oh shit, this is for real. I'm gonna play this game. I'm gonna lock in. I'm gonna be ready for any future content that rolls out from this game. But there was never that moment for Anthem. It didn't have PvP either. Yeah, I would say PvP really carried Destiny, at least initially. I don't know if Anthem needed PvP. That would have been wild though. Anthem PvP would have been wild. The main thing is like, we just needed stuff to do. But a PvP mode would not have saved Anthem. It needed its Vault of Glass moments. And not just Vault of Glass moments, Vault of Glass right after the launch. And then even beyond that, it needed a Taken King moments. Anthem never really got a Taken King moment. I don't know, man. It just seemed like BioWare their heart wasn't in it, man. That's just my observation, I felt like BioWare's heart wasn't in it. Once they realized like how much work they were gonna have to put into it, maybe they could have pushed back on EA a bit, but and then of course the money situation, right? Y'all screaming it's EA, not BioWare. It's probably both. I think it's both. I think it's absolutely both. You know, I think BioWare, I just felt like they didn't have heart to really follow through on it. And I also felt like they seemed a bit fatigued. I'm basing this off of like the live streams and stuff like this. You know, this didn't seem like they were ready to get down with it for what was required. They were literally working on 2.0 and were in the process of fixing it before they got cut off. It was EA CEO that demanded they put flying in the game because they decided to take it out. So think about that. What? Is that true? It didn't have flying? Anthem didn't have flying? Oh, that would have been awful. That's like the best thing the game's got going for it. Hold on. No. Flying is literally the best thing in Anthem. Why would they remove that? Former Anthem lead producer says flying in BioWare's Doom Live Service shooter is proof of the dysfunction in its development. It's Anthem's worst feature because the consequences of flying aren't adequately taken into account. So this is an article actually published September 10th, 2025 by Lincoln Carpenter. Former BioWare producer Mark Dura just released the second 2-hour video in his Tell-All and Anthem trilogy, in which he's chronicling his recollections about the production of the infamous BioWare live-action shooter that's due to go offline for good when its lifetime development term ends in January. Dura's first video covered Anthem's earliest years and the issues with its initial conception that he said echoed through the duration of its development. The second chapter is a meaty one because it begins in 2017, the year that Dura took over as the project's executive producer, and a time when he said Anthem had developed this highly dysfunctional relationship with decision making. In the years following, Mass Effect creator and original Anthem creative director Casey Hudson's departure from BioWare, Dara said that Anthem wallowed without a clear direction. Sustained by BioWare's mythology and EA's hope for the project's live-action potential, Anthem existed in purgatory where decisions about its production were either never made or endlessly relitigated. Oh yeah, that's what we heard. We heard a lot of things. We heard like they weren't even allowed to talk about other games out there that they're competing with. For instance, supposedly you couldn't even mention like Destiny 2 and stuff, which is crazy. Even after he took over as executive producer and started making calls to drive the production forward, Dara said that inertia persisted. As an example, he said when he joined the project, only a single Anthem mission existed, Den of Wolves. Damn. So in 2017, only one mission? Despite his effort to get the dev team to move on to other missions, Dara said the studio instead burnt that mission down and built it again. By doing so, the team hampered its ability to assess the reasons why Anthem's missions didn't give players much to do. What the hell? The game released in 2019. The mission quality in Anthem would have become obvious earlier, perhaps early enough to have actually addressed the issue, Dara said, but instead we continued to work on Den of Wolves for another several months. And by the time it was clear that the project didn't have enough activities within its missions, it was frankly too late to really do anything about it. Dara blames an amount of this continued dysfunction on his own failure to diagnose a breakdown in communication between BioWare's Austin, Edmonton offices. At the time when Dara joined the project, he and the rest of Anthem's leadership were based in the BioWare Edmonton's office, which had started to foster an atmosphere of skepticism about the work coming from the development staff at BioWare Austin, an atmosphere that Dara said he was initially susceptible to. I was in Edmonton. I was surrounded by the leaders of the project who distrusted the effectiveness of the team in Austin. And that was the bias that I picked up, Dara said. I similarly didn't put in the time to completely understand what was going on the ground in Austin. And it resulted in me making some big missteps. I don't understand. So you had leadership in one place and then the people that are actually doing the work in another? Hell, just move in. Super common. Dara said issues with communication direction improved as senior production and technical leadership roles moved to the Austin office, but the duration of the breakdown meant BioWare wasn't fully comprehending fundamental issues with Anthem's design until late in its development. Because in classic BioWare style, the game was only coming together in the last few months. Anthem's issues weren't obvious in the code until it was often much too late to fix it. There were people, most of whom were in Austin, who were screaming into the darkness that we needed to think about things like the economy, things like the end game. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they didn't have it. Well before it was too late. But because that leadership had become dysfunctional, because these communication channels had been damaged between Edmonton and Austin, that wasn't really being heard. Anthem's flying, Dara said, is a crystallization of the project's dysfunction. Flying in Anthem feels great enough that it's the primary thing you'll hear former Anthem players remembering fondly. But as enjoyable as soaring around in a bespoke Iron Man suit was, Dara said it revealed how thoroughly Anthem's creative direction was ill-conceived. Anthem's development had what Dara called an on-again, off-again relationship with flying. It had been implemented for varying degrees throughout the project, but its inclusion always brought design complications. Flight changes the demands of environmental art and design. It means combat has to account for players making melee enemies and cover irrelevant at a moment's notice. It presents technical challenges for memory management and asset streaming, and it makes mission and narrative design a nightmare because a party of 4 could be flying around and triggering events in different areas of the map at the same time. Okay, oh yeah. That's why I was saying, like, in some ways, Anthem probably could have been a better, like, single-player game. You know what I mean? Or even, like, almost like a single-player ARPG in a way. You know, I see what, in some ways, I see what he's saying. For those reasons, Dara said Anthem's creative director had made the call to remove flight, have the team focus on core game design, and then revisit flight afterwards. Oh no. But while flight was eventually re-implemented, it had been absent for long enough that the rest of the game barely acknowledges it there. Not only is it causing consequences the way that other things are working, other things aren't pushing back, aren't causing their own consequences, intentionally integrating and weaving it into the overall structure of the gameplay as a whole. I think flying is Anthem's best feature, but I think you can argue that in a lot of ways, it's Anthem's worst feature because the consequences of flying aren't adequately taken into account. I definitely don't think you should. This right here. Anthem's creative director had made the call to remove flight, to have the team focus on core game design, and then revisit flight afterwards. I just think that it's like the equivalent of being like, for like Destiny, being like, we're gonna remove supers from every class. All you get is a grenade and a melee. Now balance the game. That's just, you're taking a huge feature, a key feature. You know what I mean? When you inject it back in, it's gonna change everything you just created, or essentially thought you created. All right, good article from Lincoln here. Look, man, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend to know step by step how to create a game. You know what I mean? What I will say is that Anthem is actually a good game, and the flying is probably the thing that stands out most about it. So yeah, I could see the difficulties of balancing flying in a game. You could essentially dip from engagements, public events, and things like that would pull you to it. You could completely bypass with flying, having enemies that can keep up with the level of mobility that you have. I think the other thing that was not really mentioned here, I'm sure flying, you're able to explore the world faster because you're able to fly. And so I'm sure that, you know, that kind of takes away what they would hope as far as like replayability. Again, the idea of every live service developer is to put you on a treadmill, but give you the illusion that you're not on a treadmill. You know what I mean? And we just ran out of content. Ran out of content with Anthem.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.